Hello and welcome to the Eagle Eggs Podcast. I'm your host, Henry Conti, the Communications Coordinator with the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Local School District. Before we begin with quite possibly my favorite person in the district, I'd like to thank you all for listening. This is the last podcast before the break. I know, I'm as sad as you are, but sometimes we need a break. It has truly been an honor to bring you all of these podcasts, and I'm hoping to do more. So please, let your friends who are interested in the district know about these. Ask them to like, follow, and subscribe. We really want to spread the message of the wonderful things that people in this district are doing. In the future, we hope to talk a little more about the events that are coming up, but we'll get there. Today, my friends, we have the talented, the knowledgeable, the dare I say lovely Katie Bills-Tenney. Katie and I met last year when I forced my way into helping with the journalism class, but she humored me nonetheless. She, like me, is a news hound, and we discussed that, what it's like to teach in the Bellbrook School District, and a whole bunch of other things. I really, really enjoyed this conversation, as I always do with Bills, so please, stick around and listen. All right, Bills, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
I'm going to start with flattery and tell you are one of my favorite people in this district, bar none. You are probably one of the only people who text me over the weekends with fun stuff and not problems.
Like pictures of my beet salad that you're like, that looks disgusting.
Yes, things like that. But also pictures of your adorable dogs.
Yes, they're puppies.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so just so the listener knows, we made our introduction when I bossed my way into your journalism class.
Yes, and it was great. I needed that, and I'm just seeing so much improvement. Like we were ready for that in the journalism program, so I welcome your bossing.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I accept your flattery as well. You mentioned a little bit of you grew up in Northeast Ohio, but you also grew up here.
Yeah, I did. So my dad got stationed at Wright Pat against everyone in the family's will. Everybody else wanted to go back to Texas. I was born in Washington. Washington, lived in California. And then when I was starting kindergarten, we moved to Bellbrook, Ohio back in 1986. So it was still a very small town. 675 had just been completed. So people were just barely starting to move out into the outer suburbs of Dayton.
Yes.
So kindergarten through 7th grade. So it was so funny because at that point we'd been moving every 3 years. I remember after about 3rd grade, I was like, well, I may not be here next year. Well, I may not be here next year. So, and my
dad. It's a weird thing for someone that young to say.
Yeah, because that was just such a normal part of my family is to get up, move to the next station. And whatever happened in the Air Force at that time, who knows what it was, we got stuck here for 8 years, which was the longest my family had ever lived in one place. So from kindergarten through 7th grade, I went to Bellbrook schools. 4 of my brothers graduated from Bellbrook. And so my oldest brother was a sophomore when we moved here and graduated. So we were pretty well known. The big family. My brothers did a lot of stuff. They were involved in band and sports and, were standouts. My one brother was homecoming king.
You said they wrestled.
They wrestled, yes.
They wrestled you.
3 of them wrestled. Actually, wait, did all 4 wrestle? I think all 4 wrestled. Played soccer, did band, were drum majors, field commanders of the marching band, and that whole thing. So Bellbrook was smaller back then, so you could do a lot of things. And be very involved in the community because people needed you to be, because there weren't enough people to fill all the slots, right? I never intended to move back to Bellbrook. I went to school at Ricks College, which is now Brigham Young University, Idaho, in Southwest Idaho, and then I went to Brigham Young University, Provo, the main campus, and I didn't want to stay out west. I loved it, but that's not where I like to be. I like the Midwest. And I fully expected to get my AP literature teacher's job from high school. The principal was one of my high school friends' dad. I had all sorts of ins to get that job. But because my licensure was from Utah, it took a year for me to transition everything to Ohio. And it just so happened that they hired someone else. And the principal told me, he said, I couldn't look at you because you didn't have an Ohio license, because in 2005, there were a lot of teacher candidates coming out of schools. And so it was hard to get a job. And I don't even remember, I was looking all over the state for a position. And I interviewed in Winnemucca, Nevada. Like, no. I'm so glad I did not get that job. I was offered a job at Jackson Center, which is up way north, right? I interviewed at Pickerington, south of Columbus. So I had like no intention of coming back to Bellbrook.
Right.
And it just so happened, so I spent a year substituting in the district that I went to finish middle school and did high school, graduated from. And it just so happened that Bellbrook had 2 positions open that fall. And my best friend from elementary school, Debbie Grushon, was substituting, and her son was teaching English. And they kind of put my name in. And Chris Long, who was here for ages, knew my family very well. And I think between those things, they were like, why don't you apply? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then got the job.
Yeah. Could you imagine it any other way at this point?
I mean, I could.
Yeah.
One of the things, so working with the Ohio Writing Project, I go to a lot of different schools and I work with a lot of different teachers. And I'm all like, oh yeah, I could see myself working in that school. I very much, I wanted to work in a community that was similar to the one I'd grown up in. And Bellbrook and Uniontown Lake is where I went to high school. They're very similar in a lot of ways. Smaller, kind of more rural, edge of rural, right?
Right.
Like outer suburb, very supportive community, but some diversity. Like there is some changes that are happening in those communities just by nature of growth. And you know, when I was in Bellbrook in the 90s, that was when they were going through a major boom in population. I tell kids the story, so where the central office is now, that was the junior high when I was here. And I remember walking through the hallways, sliding along the walls because the hallways were so full of people. Yep. Like we all shared lockers. Like there were not enough lockers for the amount of kids in the building.
And those are small lockers.
And they're small lockers. They're half-size lockers, right? And just that's how full it was. And that was about the time that they finally passed the levy to build the high school that we have now. And so when I was hired in the early 2000s, Bellbrook had also gone through another like surge of growth, and had just passed the levy to build the middle school. So it was just so funny to come here, kind of another similar 10 years later, like similar growth pattern. And we're kind of in a different space now, even with that. So yeah, it's been really good to be in a community that I know its history, but also get to see its future and be part of its future. So that's cool.
So you recently spoke at a conference.
Yes.
Was that associated with the Ohio Writing Project? Or not?
Sort of.
Tangential?
So tangential. So it was the National Council of Teachers of English, NCTE. So that is the organization for English teachers, national organization. So it's the equivalent of what, like the medical association or whatever for other professions. And this is a nationwide, maybe even kind of semi-international, because it does have links to other groups internationally. So this year it was in Columbus. And it's a 3,000 to 6,000 teachers typically attend. And this year was pretty well attended just because we're coming out of COVID.
The dirty word.
It was online one year and it was hybrid another year. So this is one of the first years that it was like fully in person in all its glory. And so the Ohio Writing Project, which I'm part of out of Miami University, which is part of the National Writing Project. It's a 50-year-old organization that basically in the 70s, a bunch of teachers got together and said, we don't really train teachers to teach writing very well. Let's do better. And so its philosophy is teachers teaching teachers. Okay. Which is kind of the same idea of this NCTE convention. Let's hear what smart things teachers are doing in their classrooms across the country and all the different ways that literacy happens, and you submit a proposal of things that are going on, and then they have different styles of presentations. And so I was put in a panel. So we were combined, my colleague from Marymount, Liz Riley, and I were combined with two teachers from Wayne High School, actually. That was kind of fun to have like a little local link. And we were specifically talking about our work around a student assessment. So that was one of the threads of this particular convention. So we talked about that. Yeah. So yes, Ohio Writing Project was the reason. That's how Liz and I got connected. And kind of our own, we both earned our Master of Arts in Teaching, MATs, through the Ohio Writing Projects program. And she did hers on assessment, and I did mine in 2010 to 2012 on reflection. And so that's how we kind of link up in what we presented on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Was there anything big that you took from that you're, whether it's the presenting side or the other part of it that you, I'm sure, listened to some of the stuff that was there? Anything you're bringing back with you?
I think, so probably the most hilarious part, Liz and I kept talking about, it took us 20 hours to prepare a 30-minute presentation.
Yeah.
And we're like, this is a masterclass in revision and thinking about audience and thinking about, because we wanted to give something meaningful, because we know what it's like to be teachers, to go to professional development and feel like I'm not getting anything out of this. And so we wanted to make sure whatever we were talking about and showing would be something that is authentic and inspiring and like something that concrete that they could take back to their classrooms. So what we were talking about is we've been both involved in a process known as ungrading, which basically says instead of assigning points to every little thing that kids do, what if we really focus on filling them up with the language of what they're doing and helping them, it's called this idea of narrative feedback, right? Helping them see where they're doing well and where they can improve through words and not numbers. Because we find, especially in the literacy space, it's so iterative and recursive, and like it's all linked. It's loops. We talk a lot of our standards, how they loop around each other, and they're so intermingled that it's hard to assign one number to one thing, and numbers can get in the way of students knowing how to improve.
Yeah.
Because
if all they see is I got 4 out of 5,
they're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, but you still need to like work on developing a thesis that connects your ideas, that blah, 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 right?
Right.
And writing is so where the learning happens is in the revision, is in doing it again. So that, it was so funny because what we were doing as teachers to prepare this presentation was exactly what we want to do as teachers with our students who work beside them and help them improve as learners. And so I think that's my big takeaway from that. And then the other really cool experience was a lot of our ideas are based on a book by Dr. Sarah Zerwin. She's out of Colorado. She wrote a book called Point-Less. And it's basically thinking about this ungrading thing, especially in an English classroom. And it's a guide to more meaningful grading is kind of how she sets up her book. And she actually came and talked to us after our presentation. And we sat and talked to her for like a good hour. She was there at the convention. So like all these people that I've read their books, I've heard their ideas, I've sat and PD with them, to be able to kind of stand next to them in that space was really cool too. And she said, I've been going to all of these presentations because this is something that a lot of teachers have been trying. And she said, I'm trying to go to as many as I can. She said, I just want to hear what smart teachers are doing. And so I shared some of my things, some trials that I've been doing in my class with my students. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. And she's like writing it down in her notes. And she's like, I think I want to try that. So one of the things that I've implemented is I use a senior peer feedback team. So I teach juniors, and I ask seniors for community service credit to help me give feedback on writing to my juniors. And she just thought that was the most brilliant thing ever. And I was like, didn't I get that idea from you? I thought I got that idea from you. And she's like, no, I don't do that. And so she teaches IB, International Baccalaureate. And part of that is teachers aren't allowed to give the feedback after a certain point because it has to be very student-centered. And so she's like, how great to use my students to do that feedback piece, because we know it's so vital for the writing process that students are constantly receiving timely feedback.
Yeah.
Because that was the other thing too. I was dying as a teacher in 2020. I was really burning out. And it's because feedback is so time consuming.
Yeah.
And teachers are given 120 to 150 students. So it was to the point, every time I assign an essay, I was giving myself up to 8 to 10 hours of work outside of my school day in doing feedback. And I was like, I have to share this load more. I can't, this is not sustainable for me. So that was the other reason I decided to make these shifts. Because I know teacher burnout is such a huge conversation right now. And as we're seeing the numbers of teacher candidates go down, like, we have to change. We have to innovate the way that we approach the work, while still keeping true to its core principles of, we've got to give time for writing, we've got to directly teach writing, we've got to make sure students have choice and the ability to try things and do things. So, All right.
We're going to move into the flyby.
Okay, flyby.
What is your favorite food?
Oh, gosh. Hard question, because I like all food.
You like everything.
I really love food. This week, well, it's always sugar cookies.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, I love cookies.
Yeah.
And I especially love sugar cookies.
I was talking sugar cookies with frosting, or sugar cookies with, like, the sugar crystals on top?
Not the gross ones from Kroger that are, like, powdery.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking, like, the ones from Dorothy Lane Market that have
Laura cookies.
Laura's cookies, yes.
Those are my wife's go-to.
They're perfect. They are perfection in a sugar cookie. And my mom makes these big giant pumpkin ones that are also very, very good. Shaped like pumpkins, not pumpkin flavored.
Gotcha. Favorite drink?
Favorite drink? Water.
Water,
Yeah, I don't drink coffee.
Yes.
And I only drink herbal tea. I don't drink alcohol. So my go-to is always
not
water.
An herbal tea?
Yeah.
Herbal tea is not?
It's water. I love cold water.
Yeah. Favorite movie or TV show?
Oof.
Or a movie or TV show of the moment?
So it's probably The Princess Bride.
Yes. That is the correct answer.
Because I'm a child of, the 80s and the 90s. So, yeah, the one I can quote. So one that I loved in the past, I love the community of it, was Lost. That was like the first TV show where I would read the commentary every episode from the guy in Entertainment Weekly.
Yeah.
And then I would had a community of friends where we'd get together and talk about each episode.
Yeah.
So it's in the favorite, but would I go watch it again? Well, probably not.
Yeah.
So it's a hard one for me.
Favorite emoji?
Emoji. The laughy cryy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite quote? Something you might say to your students all the time, or something that brings you back to whatever you need?
We can do like the quotes we tell kids all the time, right?
Yeah. It can be the ones you use for your students.
Change your attitude, change your life. It's probably one that I go to a lot. And our senior quote was, it was a Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I hear it, I'm like, oh, that's my quote. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up to get it.
Sorry, I'll do the dramatic reading like
Okay, do the dramatic reading, but it's the one where he's basically saying what matters most is what's inside us.
What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And finally, if you could go back to when you first started teaching and tell yourself something, what would it be, and would you listen?
So this is a funny story, right? Because I got my degree from Brigham Young University, and my professor, Debbie Dean, who who's written multiple books about teaching writing, told us in our writing pedagogy course, we do not teach you enough. You need to go find a National Writing Project site. And for whatever reason, that stuck with me. And that is why I ended up at the Ohio Writing Project. Mm-hmm. And that is why I'm still in the classroom today. It's because of that experience, that thing she told me. Mm-hmm. So I didn't do that until I taught for 5 years.
Gotcha.
I wish I'd started sooner. I waited because we had a gifted intervention specialist, like cohort come from Wright State, come to Bellbrook, and I did that first. And I wish I had gotten into the writing project sooner. But it really was good timing for me to have some experience under my belt before I could, not that I ever wear belts, anyway, but before I was working on my master's. I was glad I waited to start my master's until I taught for 5 years, but I wish I had started sooner, just because I changed and I became a much more thoughtful, and I always felt like I was a reflective teacher anyway. Mm-hmm. I was naturally that way with my music background, being very critical, being very like self-critical, not critical of others, but like self-evaluative, thinking about what am I doing, what do I want to do better, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm glad I had that, but there's so much I learned. And then the work I started doing with professional development through the Ohio Writing Project, that changed my classroom even more. And yeah, it always adjusts and changes as I learn more.
Yeah.
But just how I've become so much more, when you first start teaching, you're kind of copying all the teachers you had before you, right? Yeah. And what was done to you as a student. And I really started to understand why I was making the choices I was making after that. And yeah, I like myself a lot more 20 years in. Yeah. I liked the teacher I was at the beginning, right, and the development, the relationships I developed with students and that sort of thing, but the things I can do with students now is so exciting. And the growth that I get to see because of the changes I've made around grading and feedback and reflection and revision and all those sorts of things, yeah, it's what keeps me coming back. Yeah. Because I want to try, let's try this. Let's see what happens next. Let's see where this goes. So.
Well, Bills, as you know, I adore you.
Oh, hey, thanks.
And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.